I'm as usual month late to the party and bringer of bad news to top it off. As I boldly proclaim, from all classes, Weapon Mastery System benefits Warrior the least. For anyone who, like me, couldn't take part in beta because life, or is just clueless, from Soto onward Elite Spec exclusive weapons will be available to all specs, and unlike specs themselves, their weapons won't be gated behind their respective expansions. With that out of the way, why will Warrior benefit the least? Simply, only weapon that will see use outside its designated spec is main hand dagger, while in cases of all three offhand weapons, it's improbable at best. The aforementioned dagger will also see use mainly in PvP, in hands of the Berserker, as there is no other way Berserker could possibly access Boon Strip and Unblockable Burst without severely gimping himself in the process. Bladesworn won't probably utilize dagger, as without access to Breaching Strike he couldn't benefit from Boon Strip, mobility and unblockability all packed into that single button, which would leave him with just Auto Chain or a Slicer in all its glory and Micro Days from Disrupting Stab, which would be side grade at best in all instances except replacing Mace in Alaxworn build, and being better than Mace is not an accomplishment. Offhands, however, don't get the saving grace of being better than Mace, as all of them have to compete with Axe and Shield for spots in builds. Axe reigns supreme in all PvE power builds and some PvP power Zerker builds as well, while Shield rules unconditionally as Warrior's prime defense tool, providing only through hard block in Warrior's entire arsenal. In this context, it has to be also included that each and every Warrior spec has traits related to their signature weapons. Spellbreaker has Sun and Moon style, giving him 10% more damage for just wielding a dagger. Bladesworn has Guns and Glory, with entire column of ammo-related traits right next to it. And Berserker has, well, had Hit the Soul. Only reason PvE Spellbreaker uses dagger is its signature trait boosting damage of offhand axe. Only reason PvE Bladesworn uses pistol is its signature traits increasing damage of his dragon trigger, and only reason Berserker uses torch is he doesn't. Without Fierce as Fire, Bladesworn would use axe offhand. Without Sun and Moon style, Spellbreaker would use dual axes, and Berserker didn't use torch even while old Hit the Soul was here. PvE meta of Warrior won't even budge on Soto's release, and PvP meta won't really change either. For example, try to justify using torch on any spec but Berserker. It is primarily a condi weapon with long cooldowns and very little defensive utility. Flames of War do remove conditions, but they also have longer cooldown than Shake It Off in all game modes. On top of which, if you put Torch on Bladesworn for example, it won't change that everything Gunsaber only scales with power. That said, Torch does have surprisingly high power ratios for a condi weapon, but that's not enough, especially in environment where axe and dagger offhand exist. Torch, even in condi builds, is outshined by sword offhand. Not only Riposte compensates for not running shield, but Impale is very unique in Warrior's arsenal and also is pretty strong. Torch as a condi weapon already loses to sword, and as a power weapon loses to everything but mace. Dagger and pistol provide at least some defense against ranged pressure via Bladestorm and Aegis Shieldmaster combo respectively, and that might allow them to carve a slice of power damage cake in a niche where axe offhand isn't played due to lack of defenses and shield is just a bit too passive for some reason. That said, Bladesworn will keep using pistol due to its synergy, and Spellbreaker doesn't need any more damage, which leaves us with just Berserker to give new toys to. And despite the fact that Berserker can utilize all of these to high extent, and I can see both dual dagger Berserker running at terrified rangers with super speed and Bladestorm up, as well as pistol Berserker, making himself bulletproof with Savage Lip, Gunstinger and Shieldmaster, or even malicious combination of these two, with any other way you can slot axes, swords, shields and notable two-handers into the build, but what has to be said, has to be said. Only Berserker, and only in PvP, gets tools that he didn't have previously that he gives a crap about, let alone desires. If Bladesworn equips Torch or Dagger, he loses sustain from Axe Pistol, Unshakable Mountain combo. And Spellbreaker has no need to step away from his old reliable Dagger Shield to Hunter setup. There is not enough synergy with spec weapons in Warrior's core traits to justify using more than just best-in-slot weapons, especially when there is no class mechanic that would reduce the need for running the best-in-slot weapons instead of bloody incentivizing it. There is zero synergies with ammo skills or explosions in Warrior's core toolset, as all of them are enclosed within Bladesworn as if they were an afterthought. Condi Zerke's main source of high damage is interaction between Fire Aura and Rage skills, while no skills in Core Warrior even mention a synergy with Burning Application or Fire Field. And finally, Spellbreaker is the only spec that directly synergizes with Boon Removal and only one that even mentions Boon Removal in its traits. Warrior's elite specs are so self-contained with their signature features, and Core Warrior is so bland, plain and dysfunctional that there is no overlap between two specs that would allow for direct synergy and not enough overlap between specs and core features that would allow for some grokking variety. Please, enlighten me, O great hydrated one, how am I supposed to find anything that synergizes with fucking Vengeful Return? Crapface out.